Welcome to All Things Financial, Trey Peterson and Yelisey Coots, Season 2, Episode 60. And I'm really excited for today. We have our friend Jordan Montgomery, who spent over 10 years in the wealth management industry. Now he's one of the top leadership and coaching gurus out there, and a friend of mine. Really excited to have him with us. He's going to talk about his book, The Art of Encouragement, and whether you're a retiree, a father, a mother, or a CEO, or maybe you're just getting started in your company, he's going to talk about the art of encouragement and how it can impact your life. Join us for episode 60. Today we're talking about the art of encouragement by our friend Jordan Montgomery. So good to have you with us, Jordan.
Good to be here. Always fun to do this with friends.
Yeah.
And so it's always an honor to be on a show, but it's more fun when you get it with the people you care about.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Thankful that you're a new friend and becoming a good friend.
That's
and
right.
One of the things that's really neat about you is that you spent over 10 years in wealth management, and then you made a transition into leadership and coaching. And one of the things I like is that we don't just share the same core values, we share the same faith. And one of the things I've watching you via social media is the value that you place on your wife, Ashley, and your kids. And even when we've talked about events and coming to be with us, your response was, let me check with my wife. And a lot of the men in our industry are like, let me tell my wife when we're coming. So I love that about you. So one, thank you for valuing your wife and your kids the way that you do. And my business coach always says when you connect with somebody, there's two things that you connect with: the way that they think and what their spirit is. And I see both of those in you. So thank you.
Hey, praise God. And I see that in you as well. It's one of the things that I've been really drawn to is just your admiration for Steph, the way that you honor her, care for her. Big deal. So
Thank you so much.
Back at you.
Today we're going to talk about your book, The Art of Encouragement. Before we do, I'm a part of your Coach the Coaches, and you've got a bunch of guys, whether they're in wealth management or the mortgage industry, or they're coaching everybody, and you're just helping coaches get better. But you talked about something that I loved, and you talked about the thing that people value most in others, and it was related to gratitude. If you wouldn't mind just starting off, tell us how gratitude has impacted you and what it does for others.
Yeah, so actually this came out of a leadership retreat that we hosted last year. And we had a guy by the name of David Horsager, who's actually a Minneapolis guy, who conducted the largest study on the topic of trust in the history of the world. Wow. I can't verify that, but he's the trust guy, so I'm going to trust him. Okay,
I trust him too.
And he's a great guy, strong Christian man. And he says, all of the research reveals that there's this one thing you can do in the early stages of a conversation with another human that establishes more trust than anything else.
Wow.
All the research reveals this one thing is, drumroll, gratitude. And so it's expressed gratitude because there's a difference between having it and sharing it.
Yeah.
But David's point was when you use nuanced gratitude in small conversation, it creates trust and connection. And the subconscious mind is attracted to people who are naturally grateful. So it's been a good reminder for me. And I think, part of my spirit, maybe the way that God wired me is like glass half full, like eternal optimism. So like I've always sort of been probably somebody who communicates with a certain level of positivity and gratitude, but it's good to know that it's not just a happy-go-lucky way to live, but a purposeful way to communicate and relate to the world.
When you think of, the art of encouragement, one of the things that I've heard is that when you read somebody's book, that you're reading the best of them. And in your book, you talked about a gentleman that you met him, and you said what a lot of us would say. You said, hey, I've heard a lot of great things about you.
Oh, man.
Would you share that story really quick? And then I'll hand it to Yelisey. But I actually love this story because I've thought there's a lot of times that I'm specific, but there's also a lot of times that I say what you said, hey, I've heard a lot of great things about you. And I think that lesson from the end of your book is so powerful. Would you just share that really quick?
Happy to. Hard lesson, but a good one. And to set the stage maybe and give listeners a backdrop. So when this story takes place, I'm 27 years old, and I was really kind of living for the ways of the world. Like my identity was very much attached to things and outcomes and money. And I was in wealth management and was having a lot of worldly success.
Yeah.
Knew my goals, but didn't know my values. And if you know your goals, but don't know your values, your goals can take you to a place that you never intended to go.
Very good.
And that's sort of the story of my life. So I'm having a lot of success. I'm working the 12 to 14 hour days. And really, Trey, my identity is just totally wrapped up in my business. And there's a lot of pride issues and ego issues. And so I get unexpectedly fired from a job that I loved. And it wasn't because of one big thing. It was a series of a lot of little things. And I had a leader in my life say, you haven't done anything malicious or intentional, but you've been careless and casual. When you're casual, you create casualties. Today's going to be your last day. He said, you can go work somewhere else. You just can't work here. I don't trust your character.
Wow.
And it was a major turning point in my life at 27 years old. And so God used every ounce of it like he often does. My deepest hurt became my greatest ministry. I ended up falling into the leadership coaching and speaking business, but not before I did a stint in Minneapolis with a guy by the name of Tim Bohannon.
Yeah.
So Tim Bohannon takes me in. He's like, hey, you can come work here. I'm going to do two things. I'll help you rebuild your business, rebuild your life. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to hire you a coach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, great. It's generous of Tim to do that. I didn't know anything about this coach other than he coached my now new boss, Tim. So good enough for me, right? I'm like, I respect Tim.
Right.
This guy coaches Tim. He's like, you're going to meet with this guy. His name's Bob Tykert. You'll see him in the conference room, noon today. Be there in 3 hours. So what I didn't know is Tim had told Bob all about my past. So Bob knew, recently fired, pride and ego issues, idolizes the business. Like this kid is like just full of it, right? And by the way, at this point in my journey, I'm still kind of in denial that I got fired. So like if somebody on the street would have been like, so what happened? I'd be like, oh, I'm moving on. I didn't move on. I got fired. But I can't even really own it. I can't really talk about it because I'm so insecure about kind of the whole thing. I walked down the hallway 3 hours later, Mendota Heights, Minnesota, into this big corporate conference room to meet Bob. Bob's in his early 70s, kind of has an East Coast style, hair slicked back, jet black suit, red tie, a lot of wisdom, very stern, and definitely a truth teller. So I walk into this conference room with as much inauthentic bravado as a 27-year-old recently fired guy could muster up. And I look at him and I say, Bob Tykert, my man. Like, first off, who says my man to somebody who's 72 years old? But that's what I said. And like right away, it's got to be like this kid, And I say, I got to tell you, man, it is great to meet you, like with all this energy, right? And with hardly any energy, he says back, nice to meet you, Jordan. I'm like, oh, that didn't go quite like I thought it would. And I said, well, again, man, I've just heard so many wonderful things about you. It's an honor to be, in your presence. And he says, so like, what have you heard? And I'm like, oh, really all I heard was from Tim like 3 hours prior. I was just trying to say that's my conversation. And I was like, well, just so many things. I don't know where to start. So it's a lot of good stuff. And so he doesn't laugh. He doesn't really respond. He just stares at me. He says, Jordan, why don't you sit down? And so we sit at this long conference table and he just lets it be silent for like, 20 seconds. He's patting the table and he's staring at me and it feels like an eternity. And then he says, Jordan, here's the problem. He said, I think you are full of shit. And you have an authenticity problem. And I want to help you with that. And in a moment, my face completely changes, like the tears just flood my cheeks. Because he read right through me. He's like, you're this really broken man. I'm 27. I'm not really a kid, but I'm acting like a kid. And you're living for all these things that don't matter. You're valuing things that you shouldn't value. And you don't need to be that way with me. I just want you to be real. And so for the next hour, we just talked about the things in life that do matter. And that night I opened my Bible and I found a church and got plugged into a small group. And it just, this whole story of sort of redemption, reconciliation started to begin.
So cool.
Yeah.
One last follow-up then on Untitled Chapter. When you left the company that you were at, you went to go work with another advisor in Minneapolis for 2 years. How did you decide how to transition? Because one of the things that I've found the last 3 years coaching people is deciding when to quit and when to push through. Because my first career, I got into commercial insurance. And I got in because I knew somebody that had the fruit in their life that I wanted. And I was like, man, Leroy's 45. He makes like $350,000 a year and he's always golfing. I'm not a golfer, but I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And so he got me into business insurance because he loved what he did. And I spent 3.5 years chasing the fruit that he had, hating the process. And so you were a successful wealth manager. I'm curious, did you enjoy your work? If you did enjoy your work, even after the 2 years in Minneapolis, how did you decide to move into leadership and coaching instead of stay in wealth management? Because it wasn't like you left something where your income was capped.
Yeah.
Curious,
Yeah.
how did you decide I'm going to make a transition, not just to another company, but to a different field? For those that are saying, hey, I'm trying to decide, do I make a transition to a different company or a different industry?
First off, I think God was really kind to me in revealing future plans, but it didn't come without a lot of anxiety on my end to make the right decision. Yeah. And so I end up moving back to Iowa. I meet this woman who's now my wife. Her name's Ashley. Yeah. And we start building this life together, and I'm still in the financial services business. But I told her one day I wanted to open a coaching business. And so literally I started coaching 5 people, and it turned into 10, and it was just this little modest, humble kind of business. But by God's grace, it continued to grow, and more opportunities presented themselves. And eventually it was like, I've got 50 clients, but yet I've got this financial planning business, and I feel like I'm torn. Like what am I going to do? And I'm in a conversation, my friend Sarah Henning, who's friends with both my wife and I, and she's a leadership consultant. And I'm telling her, like, I'm really sideways. Like, I don't know if I should stay in financial planning, or do I leave and sell this business? But man, I've worked so hard to build it. And she said something really powerful. She asked me this question. She said, do you need to make a decision right now? And I said, well, not like right now, but in the future. And she says, yeah, but like right now? And I said, no, like not right now. And she said, well, 2 things. She said, if you don't need to make a decision right now, one is, why don't you just enjoy where you're at? And 2 is, why don't you trust and ask God that when it's time, he'll make it abundantly clear. And so that night, Ash and I just began to pray that, like, okay, God, like, if you want us to leave this business, show us, like, be clear with us. And we prayed that prayer for 6 months. And then I've never felt God's hand and voice so clearly in my life as when it was time to leave that business. Well, yeah, he made it clear, you know, really after a lot of wrestling, a lot of struggle. Yeah. But through some prayer and counsel from some good friends, it was like, it was time to move on.
The other thing I liked is that you got advice and counsel, because what a lot of people do is if they get counsel they don't want to hear, because you maybe didn't want to hear it. They take the advice anyways. Yeah. Where one of the things I've found is a lot of people, if they don't get the advice they want, they look for another mentor to tell them what they wanted to do anyways. So hats off to you for being teachable.
I think it was a Holy Spirit moment too, right? Because I'm not sure it wasn't like, it was an organic conversation with Sarah. So I don't want to give myself too much credit. Like to her credit, she stepped in and really kind of challenged me as a friend. And that was, it was a turning point for sure.
I wanted to ask you, and this might sound a little bit on the nose, but in light of the title of your book, is it possible that encouragement is overrated? And, so here's what I mean by that. So, we're living in a world where everyone is looking for immediate affirmation. They want someone to tell them that they're doing good, that everything's great, and they want that immediately. And they're looking for things like social media. They're looking for things like friendships to affirm them without actually having, in some cases, done anything that deserves affirmation. So in that context, is encouragement, or can encouragement be overrated?
I have 2 thoughts. One is inauthentic encouragement is highly overrated. Which actually I think is what most of us think about. When you think about encouragement, you think of the attaboy, way to go, like the coach or the
flattery,
the mentor, just like the cheesy cachet. And so to that end, I'd say we live in a world that's really artificial and fake, and we don't need any more of that. What we do need is people, leaders, humans who are willing to make the people around them feel valued, understood, known. Our most basic social need is the need to feel known. Like, we all want to know that our lives have purpose. 80 times in the scriptures, the word encouragement is used. The Greek word parakletos is used. Hebrews 3:13 says we should encourage each other daily. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 says encourage one another and build each other up. And so I want to be really clear, this isn't just a strategy for winning with people. This is actually God's design.
Wow, very
and
good.
So it's important, I think, that we remember that, like, as we encourage others, I'm being obedient to what God called me to. This isn't just like flattery or a way to get what I want with people. And so if we come at it from that lens, it's not overrated. But I think it's important to separate, like, the difference between inauthentic and authentic encouragement.
Sometimes whenever we encourage people, maybe we're just saying things that are positive, but other times you're actually encouraging somebody and you're directing them in a specific direction, right? You're directing the course of action. Is there any scenario where you feel responsible for the outcomes, where you're attached to those outcomes in some way, where if things don't go according to plan, or maybe worse than that, if things end up being disastrous for that person, how attached are you to those outcomes, and do you have to effectively disattach yourself so that you don't feel a sense of responsibility for what happens?
Well, I think it's pretty easy for any leader to start feeling pretty good about the advice that you give. I've had many moments in my leadership journey. I'm like, oh, I nailed that call, or I nailed that conversation. And the reality is, if you coach with us for long enough, we will for sure let you down. I'll disappoint you. I'm going to give you advice that isn't right for you, or say something that was off-putting. So I say all that just to say this. I think I don't want people to subscribe to Jordan's philosophies and ideas. I want to turn people back to Jesus and say, like, hey, what's God's plan for your life? What does God think of that? How? What does the scripture say about that decision that you're trying to make? And so I'll be honest that sometimes my flesh gets in the way, and I might be quick to share one of my own ideas that is probably not in total alignment 100% of the time with what God wants for that person. But I do think, there's a responsibility. Luke 12:48 says, to whom has been given much, much is required. To whom's been entrusted with much, much more will be asked. And so if you're going to be in a position of leadership, I think really being thoughtful about how you provide counsel matters a lot, And final thing I'll say, I think I'm learning that I've got to ask more questions and give less answers. So back to advice is like, I want to help people discover, not tell. And I think as I'm growing in my leadership journey, as becoming more apparent that I've got to continue to work on that.
When you meet with, whether it's a CEO or a CFO or a controller, what are some of the patterns that you see that you feel like God's given me the giftings to help people in this arena? Like what's one or two things that you see a lot that would help others with the giftings that you have?
I think intuition and a willingness to ask more questions. Craig Rochelle said this to me the other day, and this is so good. He said, it's necessary to ask at least 3 questions in any conversation with any one person. I've probably been guilty for a lot of my life of just not asking enough questions. And there's the why behind the why, and then there's the why behind the what. I've asked the why behind the what, right? Like, oh, why do you think that's important? But the why behind the why is like oftentimes the real answer that never gets discovered. So I think I shared this with you, Trey. This is a learning moment for me. I'm on a Zoom call recently. Mentors, mentees. One of the mentors asked one of the mentees, what's your dominant business goal for the year? And the young mentee speaks up and he's like, well, my dominant business goal is to earn X. And the mentor is like, hey, that's great. Like, why do you want to earn X? Yeah. And the young mentee says, well, if I can earn X, I could provide for my family in kind of a unique way. Yeah. And the mentor's like, hey, that's great. And so often the conversation would stop there. But clearly the mentor, using intuition, is picking up on like, hey, there's more to this kid's story. Like what's going on with that response? So he says, if you don't mind me asking, so this is the why behind the why is it important for you to earn X this next year? And his face changes. It was a cool moment in the conversation. He says, well, appreciate you asking, and I don't mind that you asked. My mom was recently diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she's got 12 to 24 months to live. Wow. And I figure if I can earn X, I can make some memories with her before she passes. And it was like a bomb was dropped on a table,
right?
Because we all got to the heart of the matter.
Wow.
And everybody heard that guy's heart. And I went, man, like such wisdom from that leader.
Yeah.
Just to be willing to go a little deeper
Yeah.
with more questions.
Yeah.
So that'd be one principle I think is just
that's good.
A willingness to go deeper. Like Trey, you're a master question asker, and
Thank you.
And I think that's a big part of being a great communicator and a great leader.
One of the things that I teach is that the voices that we listen to determine the course of our life. You've talked about Craig Rochelle. What's drawn you to him, and then who would be a second person that's a voice in your life?
I think Craig is just a truth teller. I think black and white, what you see is what you get. I like that he has a certain level of discipline with how he attacks life, so I respect and admire that. John Gordon's been one of my primary kind of mentors in life. With both those guys, I love that Jesus is at the center of their life. I love that. That it's more about, hey, go follow Jesus, don't follow me. Yeah. I think there's a lot of leaders in this world that are like, hey, follow me, be a part of my tribe. And that's okay. It's just not It's just not as good as following the Lord.
Yeah.
Very
good.
So I love that about those guys. And then, there's a guy that disciples me. His name is Dale Mulliken. Nobody knows him. He's an elder at my church. Dale's in his early 60s, retired, lives a pretty modest life. And he will do like 25 meetings a week in a coffee shop, 1-to-1, with a bunch of young guys, and doesn't get paid for it. I don't know if anybody really knows that he does it other than the people sitting in the coffee shop.
Yeah.
When I think about who I want to be when I get older, as cool as Craig is and John, and like I know they have the Outfront brand and the podcast and books.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, give me Dale Mulliken all day, every day, because someday the Lord's going to look at that guy and say, well done, good and faithful servant. Like you did it in secret, and you used your time, treasure, talent for things that matter.
So good. One of the questions I get a lot is, Trey, it seems like you're in a lot of rooms with people that are having a lot of success. Are you paying for friends? And what's interesting to me is it makes me laugh because it's like, man, if I'm paying somebody because they have a leadership and coaching company, I'm paying for a service. People don't go, you pay your financial advisor. And so one of the things I've found is I think the coaching world is getting bigger, and I think people are seeing the value in it, but I still think it's on the front end, of where it's going. What would you say to someone that says, are you paying for friends, or what does it look like what does mentorship look like for you? How do you decide what percentage of your income you spend on that or invest in that? How has mentorship impacted you? And what would you say to that person?
That's a great question. I think relationships often come from experiences, and experiences almost always come from investment. Whether you're investing resources or time or energy, like you've got to slow down and invest to have a great experience.
Yeah.
Whether you attend a ball game with some people from your local community or you fly to XYZ city to get some leadership training. I think it's prudent of any leader, any person to say, part of what I want to get out of this experience is relationship. And I would way rather learn from somebody 200 times than once at a training. Yeah. And so I guess if by that standard, somebody looks at that and says you paid for friends, then you're right. I guess I paid for a friend. But it's got to be authentic, genuine. Like we talk about, Trey, the difference between coachable and teachable. Yeah. And I'll go at this quick, but a lot of young leaders think they're coachable, and we'd say you're teachable, you're not coachable. Because a teachable person is caught up in the moment and the learning. A coachable person is caught up in the future and the relationship. So most young leaders will go to an event and they're like, oh yeah, I'm ready to be coached. And they're not. They're ready to be taught.
Interesting.
And so they'll take notes, they'll stay present. They're totally caught up in what's happening in the moment, but the event is over and nothing happens. The coachable person is like, oh man, I'd love to continue to learn from the people that I met. Wow. And so they're really intentional about future relationships with everybody they met, and they follow up, and they'll say stuff like, hey, I really valued what you taught me. You said these 3 things. It's made a difference in my life. I've been taking action on it. I'd love to continue to learn from you. And Trey, you get this all the time where somebody says, I'd love to pick your brain.
Right.
And you say
all the time,
I'm really busy, right?
Yeah, you can't say yes to everything, even if you want to.
You just can't, right?
The more success you have, the busier you are.
That's it. And if you're not saying no to good things, you're not saying no enough. And so it might be this really good thing, this young person that you want to help, but you can't say yes.
Really good.
And so I just think, man, being coachable means pursuing relationship, and that should come out. Relationships should come out of any experience.
There are so many different facets of organizational leadership and so many different metrics that you could probably point to and say, hey, these are the things that help someone be an effective leader. Is it possible that someone is leading effectively, or at least if you look at it from the outside looking in, is it possible that it looks like they're leading effectively, but they're lacking in the area of encouragement? And have you ever found that to be the case with you, or are there any examples where that's something that you've noticed? Or what are the signs where that might be the case, where on the surface things look like everything is okay, but there's a real lack in encouragement, at least from the top down?
I think I for sure used to believe that great energy was loud energy or big energy. And I think, we experience this in a lot of young leaders. And so take the financial planning business, for example, right? I missed this. I was so bad at this. So I'm 25 years old, and I would sit down with maybe a widow who's, she's just entered retirement. I'm thinking about this one specific situation. This kind woman, and she loses her husband, and they're like a year into retirement, and I'm 25. And I approached her with like an energy and a demeanor and an enthusiasm that was just so off. And I remember like being 2 minutes into the conversation, like I'm missing her, like we are not connecting. And so Yelisey, I think that's a great question. I think about the concept of mirroring. I think a lot of leaders I missed the concept of mirroring.
Yeah.
And I mean like, if somebody's talking slower, I will talk slower. If somebody leans back, I will lean back.
Right.
If somebody leans in, I will lean in. If somebody does something, that thing with their hand, I'm going to do that thing with my hand. Like really, really intentional about building connection.
Right.
So that's one. I think another one, quick story, with the team out east, and we're teaching on self-awareness, which I completely lacked in the early stages of my leadership journey. My wife would say I still have a lot of work to do. But I'm teaching on awareness, and this leader, I introduced the topic, and this is a leader who's like really brash, puts his foot in his mouth all the time. He just offends the team, but he's really smart. So he kind of gets away with it because he's brilliant. He built the company, and so people just kind of like, okay, we'll just deal with him. And he's a nice guy. But when I introduced the topic of awareness, like, hey, today we're talking about awareness, he puts his hand on the table. He's like, hey, can I say something? And I'm like, sure. I'll let him be called Jim. I said, Jim, go ahead. And he's like, I am so glad we're talking about this topic, because when I became really self-aware a decade ago, everything changed. And I'm thinking what the rest of the table is thinking, which is like, this guy has no awareness and he thinks he's really aware, and that's his problem.
Yeah.
It's like crazy people don't know they're crazy, which is what makes them crazy.
Yeah.
So here's the point, is leaders slowing down to say, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? And then doing that repeatedly over and over and over and over again.
I think some of us are probably really good at reflecting and looking inwardly and identifying some areas where we might need to improve. But it just seems like more often than not, we don't make any of the necessary changes and adjustments in our life unless we bring somebody else in, right? Somebody with a different perspective, somebody maybe who isn't part of the day-to-day, at least, when I'm thinking about encouragement, I'm thinking about our office structure. Sometimes having that second set of eyes, someone who doesn't share all the same experiences and all the things that we do here together as a team, why does it take having a third party? Why does it take having that type of perspective in order to effectuate any kind of real change?
Self-awareness doesn't happen on its own, right? So without coaching, feedback, intentionality, system structure, I don't know that we just organically increase awareness. So I do think it requires high levels of intentionality, system structure, process. I'll put the question back on you guys, because, by the way, you've got a growing, thriving, incredible organization here at All Things Financial.
Very thankful.
So I'm going to put this back on you guys to say, like, when you think about how you raise awareness and build into each other and challenge each other, like, you've clearly figured out a way to do that. You invest heavily in development. Like, what does that look like for you guys to do that well?
I think one of the things that Trey and I have in common is, we have a lot of the same values. We share a lot of the same values and principles, and where we're very different is in almost every other way. Like you could ask us 100 questions and probably we're going to have a different approach or a different take, or maybe we're going to emphasize different things when it comes to almost anything else. And I think that, in some ways that could lead to our relationship being stronger, right? We actually, because we approach everything a little differently, we're naturally going to have a broader view, a broader conversation on any given topic. And I think that for us in a business sense, that helps us cover more ground and look at things from a variety of different angles.
Interesting. Thinking about your thoughts. And my guess is Trey has helped you think about your thoughts. Is that where?
Well, our business coach, his name's Keith Kraft. So he's got a quote that I love. It's really helped. But he says, who helps you think better about the things that you're already thinking about? So you just think about that. You're like, okay, the things that I'm thinking about, who do I run these thoughts by? Are my thoughts right? Because not all the thoughts that we think are right. In fact, most of them probably aren't, right? But then the follow-up question to that is what's so important, is how is the fruit of that, or how is that working for you? And so I think we're both so confident in what to do next. But when we talk about what that is it's almost like it's an option that neither of us considered. The thing that I was planning on doing and the thing that he was planning on doing. And I think what it's helped us do is it's helped us think better, just seeing that we're tackling it from a totally different perspective. What's really helped though is while our responses are different in the way that we would do it, our goal is almost always the same.
I think if I were to describe the biggest difference between how we look at decision making in general, I'm somebody who prefers to have all the data, all the numbers. Like I want to look at charts, I want to look at my Excel spreadsheets. And I think that sometimes the data is what gives me permission to make an important decision. A decision that for me, it's like, hey, this isn't just like deciding where I'm going to get gas, this gas station or the one across the street. But whenever I look at important decisions, like in some ways, it gives me the permission to, but sometimes it's actually very difficult for me to make a decision because maybe the data isn't obvious, right? And I think that on the other end of it, Trey is completely the opposite. He relies on his intuition, right? He looks at, his feelings, his past circumstances, and that's kind of what guides his decision. And I think that, when you consider those two factors, probably more of us who are wired the way I am need to rely on somebody else who has the intuition, or we need to at least be honest about the fact that the numbers don't give you all of the information that you need. You're always going to have blind spots, whether or not you're someone who's more intuition driven or somebody who's more data driven. And I think that that's where really Trey and I, we complement one another because we do really come at it from two different perspectives. I think that really just recognizing that there's blind spots in both perspectives, I think help us really to make the best decisions together.
I'll give you one example. So January of 2020, one of the things I would say, and it sounds negative at first, but it's actually very positive, is I tend to be glasses half full, right? And I just will my way into things. Yep. And Yelisey, I would say the other end is the glass is half empty or there's too much glass, right? Whatever that perspective is. As they would say, the engineer would say, like, the water's perfect, there's just too much glass.
Yeah.
But January of 2020, I'll never forget, we're 2.5 years into our business. And I walked into his office and I was like, hey, how's your day going? I just finished a second appointment which just, went perfect. And he looked at me and he goes, I just met with a prospect, somebody that was in our process. Really someone was just saying, can you improve my investments? And he goes, this gentleman just got back from China and he was telling Yelisey about this thing called COVID and how significant it was. And he's like, it's shutting down the whole country. And Yelisey's just sharing and he goes, I really think, he's like, we're next. And he's like, I think everything's going to get shut down. And we're in a model that we meet a lot of the families that we serve through the clients that we already have.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's through these classes that we teach. We teach 45 to 60 financial classes a year at libraries, universities, colleges that we lease rent space. And he goes, I think all these libraries are going to close. I think everything's going to shut down. And he's, just telling me all these things. And Jordan, I looked at Yelisey and I go, oh, Yelisey. I go, quit being so negative. I go, everything's going to be fine. Nothing's getting shut down. And within 2 weeks, libraries, colleges, grocery stores, right? Like you can't go unless, you're getting these primary things. And so I say that to say is though, even though I was like, everything's going to be fine, Yelisey saw the facts. And so what's been great is that we balance each other. And I think too, even though we're both competitive, we both respect each other's opinion. And so that's definitely been a benefit for us. One of the patterns I've seen in great CEOs and leaders is we tend to be mavericks. We want to do everything on our own. And one of the things that Yelisey and I both know is that we're better together than separate. And I see a lot of guys that are really successful, but they would be further along if they had a business partner that had a different set of strengths.
Yeah, man,
so that's benefited
so
us.
good. That's so good. So I see this in both of you. I see complementary strengths, but I also see a willingness to honor those strengths and to leverage each other. Yeah. And clearly the two of you have had to really work hard at communication and over communicating. Because here it is, right? Because it's like a marriage. Yeah. And especially when you know each other so well, and you guys went to school together dating back to college, right? 2007.
Almost 20 years.
So how easy is it then to make assumptions about I know what Yelisey's feeling. I know what he's thinking. I know what he needs. I know where he's at. And to not slow down and say how are you doing? Where are you at? How are you thinking? How are you feeling? What am I missing? And so to a leader listening, I think the question of what am I missing? Yeah. And asking that repeatedly, even to the people that you think you know the best, I think that's a really important posture to keep. And clearly the two of you have managed a way to ask that question and to over communicate. So kudos.
Thank you. I do have a question. Let's say somebody's listening and they didn't grow up in a home that encouraged. I did. I grew up in a house where, if it's somebody's birthday, like Jordan, if it's your birthday, we're going to get together for dinner. And what we're going to do in the middle of dinner is we're going to pause, and each person is going to go around and say what they love most about you, what they think of you, why they love you, a favorite story about you. And one of the things I've done is I've taken this past family. So even when I get invited to somebody's birthday party, I'll say, hey, would you be okay if I started this, and anybody that just wants to speak words of life over Jordan could jump in on that opportunity? And what's been interesting is how many times a spouse or a parent or a best friend will say, I'm going to pass, because they have never used their words or been generous with their words to encourage that person. And I'll say, why don't you just say one or two things? And one of the things I believe is that I'm called to push people in the right way. But sometimes they'll go, you know what, I will say something. And then it's like they'll start and then they can keep going. And other times they'll say, I'm just going to pass. You wrote the book, The Art of Encouragement. If somebody's listening and they go, you know what, I've never been an encourager, but I want to start in that. How can they start in their home? What does that look like? What would you say to that person?
Okay, so I think that this gets back to Yelisey's question about there's some skepticism with this topic.
Okay.
And it's because we've seen it modeled two ways. Inauthentically, but also in a language that doesn't make sense to us. And so if somebody else is speaking a language that you don't understand or it looks different, it's like, well, that's not encouragement. That's I actually feel alienated by even being without context. So here's what I think we got to give people permission to say, hey, encourage people the way that you want to encourage people. Like, do it in a way that feels natural to you. Because if I try to encourage, now you and I share pretty similar energy, so this is maybe a bad example, but if somebody who's maybe a bit quieter, more reserved, tries to encourage somebody the way that Trey Peterson encourages, it's going to feel like super
it's not them.
Non-natural. It's not them. I'll give you a great example. I was at an event. So I have a friend named Ken who's a pastor at a major church in Milwaukee. He's a chaplain for the Milwaukee Bucks, very charismatic pastor, super gifted communicator. Goes to a church where like everybody is very expressive. It's part of how they encourage, right? So like the entire time he's preaching, it's like, amen, come on. Like they're just like shouting him down. So I have him speak at this financial services event, small town Iowa, okay? And the average age is like probably mid-60s. It's an all-white crowd. I probably wasn't super thoughtful about the environment that I brought him into, and I didn't really explain. Anyway, so I also grew up in a charismatic church. I'm trying to encourage my friend, Ken. He brings a couple guys with him. We sit up at the front of the room. And so like, that's our language of encouragement. The guy sitting next to us is completely bothered. And he's like, you're interrupting the speaker. What are you doing? And I'm like, no, sir, like we're trying to encourage, but you don't get that because that's not your language. So literally, he thought the speech was great. We thought the speech was great. But he thinks instead of encouraging this guy, we're actually like we're actually doing something that's bothersome. Like heckling him. Yeah, like this is inappropriate. Like why are you're going to distract him. And he meant well by giving us that feedback. Just didn't understand. So here's what I'd say. The highest and best form of encouragement has nothing to do with words. So think about this. In the moments of deep sorrow, like if you really want to encourage or care for someone. So let's say, hope this doesn't happen to any one of us for a long, long time. But you get some devastating news that somebody who's really close to you just passed away. If that happened in this moment, if I got a phone call and I said, Trey, somebody really close to me just lost their life. You wouldn't say probably anything at all. You'd probably give me a hug and maybe you'd look at me, you'd have a certain look on your face. Maybe you would pray for me silently. You probably wouldn't say much. And vice versa, I wouldn't say much to you. In moments of deep sorrow, like where we really want to care for somebody, you just put your arm around somebody and you just sit with them. Okay, the other side of that, in moments of like pure joy, okay, so like this is like a Super Bowl championship. Guys win the Super Bowl, walk-off field goal. What do? They don't encourage each other. They just tackle each other and hug each other and roll around on the ground. There's no words. And so I think it's a reminder that encouragement doesn't have to come with colorful words and fancy phrases and all the right things to say. It's way more about a posture than it is your verbiage. It's also allowing people to be authentic. You're most effective when you're most authentic. And the reason encouragement doesn't work for so many people is because it's highly inauthentic.
I learned that when, I shared this with you, but 2 years ago, my oldest son, who's 8 now, his name's Cyrus, he was 6, but he ended up developing epilepsy. So in the middle of nowhere, he had a grand mal seizure, ended up leading to 1 a month for 4 weeks. And then they went to do a brain scan to see if there's any permanent damage, because that can cause permanent damage. And we were at Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, and they said, we need an hour with your son. We'll call you in an hour, then you can come get him. So my wife and I are at Minneapolis, our children's in Minneapolis, and we're just praying for the whole hour. We're praying and praising God for whatever report that we get. And they called us after an hour, and I said, our son's ready. And they said, no, actually, we need another hour, which isn't good news. So I said, so you found something? And they said, we found something, but we can't say what. So I said, okay. They said, we'll call you in another hour. So in another hour, we went to go get him, and they said, we can't say anything, but in a couple hours, you have an appointment with your neurologist, your son's neurologist. So we ended up going in and finding out that he had a brain tumor on his brainstem, unrelated to the seizures. So it was like, it went from like bad to worse to like, basically the worst thing is they thought it was a brain tumor that was cancerous on his brainstem. And the reason I bring that up is I grew up in the church, and we'd had people that had family members that passed away and, all kinds of terrible news. And I thought I knew how to respond. But here's what I learned is that when we shared with friends and family that our 6-year-old son had a brain tumor that was probably cancerous, and we were believing that it wasn't, there were 2 responses. There were people that responded in faith with, we know what epilepsy is, we know what a brain tumor is, and we know how big the name of Jesus is, and it's a lot bigger than the name brain tumor or epilepsy. Come on. And what they did is they fueled our faith. And then there were people that responded like, we're so sorry. And it was almost like they had already determined that our son was going to die. But here's what I learned through that whole process is that there were people that showed up that we weren't close to, and there were people that we were close to that didn't show up. And the thing that I learned is it didn't matter what somebody did. What mattered is, did they show up? And so a lot of people said, if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. And it ends up being the thing that you don't want to hear, because it's almost like, we're not going to do anything, but if you think of something, let us know. I don't know. So what I learned is I told somebody, I said, I'm never going to say to anybody, if there's something we can do for you, let us know. What we're going to do is we're just going to show up. Doesn't matter if we're bringing something that we made or a coupon or a gift certificate to DoorDash, right? But we're going to show up, or we're going to get on the phone and say, when can we show up, and just be present with you.
Come on. That's
so you
good.
saying that just reminded me of the life lesson of, if somebody's going through something difficult, right? Encouragement isn't always with your words. It's in the way that you respond, which is just your presence.
That's right.
Which is what you said, which was so good.
Man, well said. I appreciate you sharing, and I know that's been a major part of your family story.
So it has been.
Cyrus and his journey.
And God's goodness.
And God's goodness, man. Come on.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, you could pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up.
Yeah.
And so your presence is the most powerful gift that you could give another human, and you guys have experienced that,
Yeah. Well, I want to say this as we wrap up. You wrote a book called The Art of Encouragement, and it hasn't just been successful, it's been really successful.
Praise God.
And what I love is, John Maxwell wrote the Ford, which, he's not writing the Ford for just anybody. That takes him knowing that you have a gift to encourage people, to help people. I've listened to your book twice, and what's always nice is when you have a friend that did something quality and you don't have to pretend like it was great. So I love what you wrote. I love that tonight we've got, 150 plus people that are coming to hear a life lesson and a message that God gave you. I want to encourage everybody that's listening, jump on Amazon, order The Art of Encouragement, not just to support my friend, but because this book will impact not just your business, not just the way that you lead at the workplace, but the way that you lead your family. And so The Art of Encouragement by my friend Jordan Montgomery. Jordan, thanks for being with us. We loved having you on this, and we just look forward to doing more in life with you. And thank you for investing time with us.
This has been a joy, and I'm just so impressed with the two of you and your team. I know there's some folks behind the scenes. Shout out Sophia, Kelsey.
Kelsey's amazing.
There's a bunch of people that make this operation go and make the podcast go, and I love that you guys continue to keep faith at the center of your mission. You've just been so kind to me and have made me feel welcomed and valued in your presence, and this has been a real joy. So,
well, one of the things I've been telling people is you're not just going to like Jordan because he's world class, but you're going to like him because of who he is. And one of the things that I just see in you is the success that you've had is just the foundation of where you're going. And we just celebrate that. And I love the fact that you're not a sneaky Jesus person, that Jesus is out front for you. And I just know that God's going to bless everything that you guys do. And I can't wait to look back and be like, can you believe that Jordan came on our little podcast because of where you're going?
Hey,
so
this is so
thank you for
special.
saying yes.
So
and we
fun.
celebrate all that God's done and he's going to do in your life.
Amen. And right back at you. Thank you guys for having me.
All
God
right.
bless you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Episode number 60 of All Things Financial, where we help you retire once, retire well. And one of our episodes, number 3, on leadership. Download, listen. We look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you.
Advisory services are offered through CG Advisory Services, LLC, a registered investment advisor, and through Guardian Wealth Strategies, LLC, a registered investment advisor. CG Advisory Services, LLC, and Guardian Wealth Strategies, LLC, are separate and unaffiliated entities. The topics discussed on this podcast are for educational purposes only and are not intended to be investment advice or recommendations. Listeners should consult with their own financial professionals before making any investment decisions.